Lesson 18, an entire county is sentenced to death, a real story. The head of a military division trusts his commanding officer according to the belief and confidence he has in the man's abilities, his cleverness and wisdom, courage and resourcefulness, sound military planning, and the successful outcomes of his timely guidance. When the head of a division goes to war with his troops, he maintains contact with his commander, especially in the heart of a battle when the scale of the war escalates and comes to a head, and when there is little or no further opportunity to change tactics or maneuver, and he senses the actual danger surrounding the division. He can take no unilateral action, so he holds the battle line and communicates with his commander via field telephone to inform him of the details of the situation and give further orders to be fulfilled at once. Through effective communication, having considered all available information and influenced by his own previous experience, the commanding officer guides him to a plan which he acts without delay. The outcome will then be successful, for rather than being faced with a potentially devastating defeat, it can become a landslide victory. All this is achieved by virtue of his contacting his commanding officer when the division is in a very tight corner, exactly as the Arab commandant Qutayba ibn Muslim communicated with his commander-in-chief al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi when he had failed to conquer Bakura, the heavily fortified city. The commander then sent him a plan of action, and he went on to conquer the city without further delay. The examples above illustrate that if man attains true communication with God, which Allah wishes from all men for their own benefit, and if he reaches this state of communication by witnessing scenes of all his attributes, that is, his mercy, sympathy, kindness, justice, charity, and beauty, he would then experience real love of him, the Almighty, since a man's spirit is naturally disposed towards the love of perfection. Through this communication, Allah supplies him with the water of real life, which he finds compelling, and so his prayer will keep him away from committing indecent and shameful deeds. God says, if only they had remained on the right path, we would certainly have supplied them with water in abundance, so that we might enthrall them by it. But if anyone turns away from thoughts of his provider, he will curse them, cause them to undergo severe punishment. The Holy Quran, Fortress 72, Al-Jinn, the Jinn, verses 16 and 17. His heart will be filled with fire through this communication by which he is able to distinguish good from evil and truth from deceit. So long as he communicates with God, he turns honestly towards him and performs a prayer by which he communicates with none but him. This godly light will persist for him. It will illuminate the right path and enable him to discriminate between good and evil. For the Almighty says, O you that believe, be under Allah's light and believe in his envoy, and he will bestow upon you a double portion of his mercy and provide you with a light by which you will walk on the right path. Holy Quran, Fortress 57, Al-Hadith, the Iron, verses 28. The true believer asks for his provider's guidance in all his affairs and asks to be shown the right way in every matter. The Holy Hadith states, the one who is obedient to me draws even closer to me by performing good deeds of his own free will until I love him. If I love him, I shall be his ears by which he hears and his eyes by which he sees. When man follows all his words, the Holy Quran, in every matter, he will walk in safety and tranquility throughout this earthly life, and when he allows Allah's light to be the lamp which illuminates the way, he will lead a life full of happiness and peace. The Prophet formed most of his battle plans whilst praying to Allah, as did his noble companions who came after him. Allah revealed the plans to him, and by executing them, glorious victory was achieved with the least number of casualties on both sides, for he is the envoy of mercy to all the worlds. And here we shall recount an event that took place with our merciful scholar in one of the villages of Damascus, and which proves to us the truth of his words, for the scholars are the successors of the prophets. The fires of the Great Syrian Revolution erupted in Syria and soon permeated throughout the entire territory like a powerful, uncontrollable flood, for there remained no city or village that failed to join in support of the revolution. Fighting was flaring up everywhere, and adding fuel to the fire was that the French government had been informed by its spies that a particular area of Syria had become an added burden for French forces in the country because it was a major center of rebellion and provided shelter for the insurgents. They supplied them with provisions and the necessary support and assistance to fulfill their revolutionary plans of destroying French interests in Syria. Added to this, most of the men in the area joined the rebels' line, so undeniably they were with him, body and soul. The reports escalated, and the French government grew ever more angry and frustrated until the situation finally came to a head. When he could no longer contain his frustration and fury, the French High Commissioner decided to show his fangs and relieve his mind of the problems of his county, which his spies had convinced him was a hotbed of revolutionary movements undermining the security of France. If the truth be known, this rebellion was in fact a cry from the depths of the Syrian soul against the violent injustice of French occupation. Eventually his reaction was explosive: shell the entire territory, destroy it, equip a division of the army with heavy armaments, and bomb it from end to end, show no mercy, for there can be no mercy in war, torture the people. Every last one of them is our enemy. Let even the innocent die. Let the children be burned. Let the women and old men be killed. I do not care who suffers or dies. I just want this cursed uprising suppressed. The terrible news reached the people and the leaders of the insurgency by way of certain loyal patriots who seemed outwardly to support France. It fell on their ears like a violent thunderclap, and their hearts fluttered in terror as they foresaw the destruction of their entire district before their very eyes. Houses burned to the ground, the innocent become vagrants wandering the streets, children killed, women and old men slaughtered, in fact similar to what had happened previously to Al-Mulaiha village near Damascus, for no one had been spared and the village had been razed to the ground. Some people erupted in fury on hearing this news, and their bodies seemed to convulse with the tremors of revolutionary pain, while others were stunned into silence as they knew well that they would be helpless against such a heavily armed attack. Insignificant against the might of the French forces, it would probably result in causing the French to further increase their brutal attacks on innocent people, which in turn would have an awful effect on their agrarian interests. What could a small district do when it is at the mercy of one of the greatest states? What was the solution? They thought if it were only a question of our own safety, we would face it without a second thought and become martyrs for our cause. But we must think of the defenseless women, the old people, and innocent children. We do not want callous men deciding the fate of our vulnerable innocents. O God, please show us your mercy. O Allah, your mercy. They remained silent, holding back the tears of pain and sadness as if the slaughter was actually happening before their eyes. An air of quiet confusion prevailed across the country as they raised their hands in supplication to God, invoking him from the depth of their hearts and begging him to prevent this impending massacre. O God, your mercy, there are old men who have been devout for their entire lives, innocent infants and young children among us. The silence, filled with fervent, silent prayer, was interrupted by a voice mumbling, "You know that Syrian officer who helps the rebels, Shaiko? Haven't you heard anything, seen and heard about his loyalty and sacrifices for his compatriots and homeland, and his secret cooperation with the rebels against France? Everybody knows how he delivered all the arms of Anjar citadel to us, and Allah saved him and miraculously kept him from the hands of the French, and how he stopped the advance of many expeditions to the various counties of Syria by his clever plans. Why don't we ask his help to save us from this impasse and prevent the terrible carnage that's about to befall all of us?" Others replied, "What can he do in such a situation, and what can he achieve alone if he is up against the might and power of France? Even his best and most ingenious plans will be doomed to failure. We must keep in mind that as a military officer under French rule, he must be careful not to reveal himself to them and oppose them directly, so we doubt he can help us." The first one replied, "But Allah may help him to relieve us at his hands. So why don't we try? Because Allah is the one to trust in all such matters, whether great or small, and even if we fail to make use of his wonderful abilities, the situation could not get worse than it is already." All of them agreed, and one of them was sent immediately to speak to Muhammad Amin, the Syrian officer of whom they had been speaking. The envoy reached the officer's house in the evening, where he was received with kind words of encouragement, which instantly soothed his air of desperation. Officer Shaiko sat with him as he related the discussion that had taken place and the great suffering of the Syrian hierarchy and the insurgency leaders because of this impending catastrophe. Muhammad Amin contemplated the facts of the matter and soon grasped the bitter reality. He listened to this dreadful news as though it was a terrible nightmare unfolding before him, and wondered what the fate of the country and its people would be if this full-scale French military invasion went ahead, God forbid, on the French pretext that they would show only the sites of the terrorist insurgents. They had failed to disclose that they were intent on destroying it completely and shedding the blood of many, many innocents. What could possibly be done to thwart this final decision taken by the cruel, murderous French government? He pondered the matter further and experienced the full bitterness of such terrible news. Certainly it would be fruitless to face them, and if it did come to pass, there would be countless victims and far more indescribable destruction than if the situation were handled in a different way. So Muhammad Amin resorted to Allah with all sincerity. The news was extremely grave, as he knew well what France was capable of doing under such a trumped-up pretext. He turned to God in supplication. "O God, how can the Syrian people escape?" Within a few quiet moments, filled with silent prayer, entreating Allah, a plan flashed into his mind which would ensure a way out of this terrible situation by God's will. The look full of hope and confidence in God crossed his face, denoting newfound optimism, for he was certain that Allah would repel those cruel aggressors and prevent them destroying his country. He said to the envoy, "Listen to me, man. Go to your comrades at once and tell them that Officer Muhammad Amin sends them his best regards and asks you to search the entire district for a skillful artist. If you don't have one, we know an excellent gifted artist, then tell him to draw and paint the best and most perfect picture of the city of Holy Jerusalem. It must be very big. Then let everyone work together to fix it to the wall of the first house to be seen by all who arrive in this country. Then the problem will be solved by God's will." The man replied, "Is that all, sir? And the problem will be solved, but how? It seems too easy." Muhammad Amin said, "As I have told you, don't delay. Carry out the plan quickly. Ask the artist to execute the work to the very best of his ability and as quickly as possible, and remember that Allah is the one we trust to guide us in all matters." The man left promptly to carry the message to all leaders of the rebellion, whatever their level of authority. They quickly grasped the aim of Muhammad Amin, so they carried out his advice. It seemed like no time at all when the wonderful painting was fixed to the wall of the first house on the main road leading into the district. It covered the wall entirely and was in full view of everyone entering the city. It was a picture that represented Holy Jerusalem and was so huge that it could be seen from far away. The fateful time had come for the French military expedition to start moving into position to shell the entire district. The expedition proceeded with many military personnel of various ranks and a vast amount of military impedimenta and heavy armaments, headed by one of the French commandants who had previously demonstrated great brutality in dealing with the people of Syria. He was fully determined to bomb the entire district on the pretext of attacking the terrorist rebels in their strongholds and hideouts. As he approached the district, he could not fail to see the enormous painting from afar. He was using his field glasses to scan the land and prepare to give his orders on the tank crews and heavily artillery soldiers to open fire. But what was that on the horizon? He called his adjutants and asked them to turn their field glasses towards the entrance gate of the district. Then he asked them, "Do you see what I see?" Surely a painting of Jerusalem was not what he expected to see. They replied, "Yes, the people of this village must be Christians without any doubt, so the whole area must be Christian too. Which means that most of its people are our brothers in religion, and they couldn't possibly do what we have heard about them. We have no reason to destroy them. We have been given false information, and whoever reported it must be punished." The angry outburst soon dissipated, and the commander cooled down. He thought the best decision would be to withdraw and abandon all plans to shell the territory. At once he phoned the high commander of the French army in the government house and informed him of the situation, and the reply was simply, "So it is a Christian area. The news which was reported to us by our spies was definitely wrong. Retreat, let the people live in peace." The expedition leader replied, "Yes, sir, that's my opinion too. We shall withdraw immediately." He quickly gave orders to the division to withdraw and return their terrible heavy armaments to the garrison. By this action, Syria was saved from a dreadful fate, which would surely have led to its eventual destruction. Released from the terrible nightmare, the people returned to safety, living in safety, peace, and tranquility. Yes, God had answered their prayers and saved them from grave danger and bloodshed, the loss of their crops, which would have been burnt and scattered by the wind, the destruction of their houses, which would have been collapsed if fired on, burying the people inside. A threat of wholesale slaughter was removed when Allah the Almighty inspired the true obedient commander with his impressive plan, for Muhammad Amin was always ready to suppress lies and misinformation and support the truth. His compatriots in his beloved homeland, our wise man employed extreme wisdom in his defense of the truth and against the corruption of people's hearts, whilst cleverly concealing his behavior from the French. His success came because he placed his trust in Allah to guide him in all his actions to support the rebels against France. In fact, France suspected his duplicity but had no proof or evidence. Many times they tried to get rid of him, but Allah willed that he should fulfill his high aims in supporting the truth, and his merciful providence intervened miraculously in every difficult situation to save him from certain death and preserve him from the cunning of France. For Allah is a steering God, and he would never humiliate someone who is truly obedient and faithful to him. So with his sharp ingenuity, enlightened by Allah's light, Muhammad Amin was able to guide the people of this county with a ploy that ensured their safety and thereby spared them bloodshed and destruction. Truly it was the outcome of real communication with God, the fruit of godly love, and a man's unshakable belief in him.